Ladies and gentlemen, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. For those studying English literature, this is easy enough. Everybody knows this is an excerpt from what Charles Dickens wrote to begin his Tale of Two Cities with. The Tale of Two Cities had the French Revolution as its backdrop. If we speak of the French Revolution, let us remember, back then, almost the entire Europe, the old Europe, looked forward to the French Revolution because there was gross injustice. They knew something was happening. A revolution was brewing. And everybody was looking forward to it very positively, with great optimism, that justice would prevail, peace would prevail. So people like, poets, painters, composers, most of whom became very famous. Let's take a person like William Wordsworth, who paved the way for the Romantics without being a romantic himself. All of them very young, they all moved to France, to Paris. Well, the Bastille fell on 14 July 1789. The French Revolution was complete. There were celebrations, plenty of celebrations. There were so celebrations that some went berserk, till the new dispensation took over. And when that happened, my God, the new dispensation started with what many of us who have studied old history and current day developments would not be surprised with. It started with vengeance. Vengeance meaning bloodshed. And therefore what started and what followed was, as many of you are familiar with that part of history, it is called a reign of terror. Many of these people who I spoke of, the intellectuals and the like, they returned to the respective countries, but they returned dismayed. Take Wordsworth. He went to what is now famously known as Dorothy's Cottage, because Dorothy was his sister in the Lake District. And he was in a state of depression. What happened, to cut a long story short, was man lost faith in man and turned to nature. If memory serves right, Wordsworth had said, "The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see nature that is ours, 'tis a sordid boon." So, the man who believed in so many things became a pantheist, a man who found God in nature. Now, a lot of other people were also very disturbed, but the manifestations came differently. But let us not go into that. For instance, if you remember, Beethoven wrote his 9 symphonies. The third was called Eroica. He composed it and dedicated it to Napoleon. But then he tore it into shreds, as Mr. Donald Trump tears up many deals. He tore it to shreds and rededicated it, recomposed it, rewrote it, and rededicated it to one who had died young. That was the third symphony, which is also known as the Eroica. Plenty of disillusionments. But why am I talking of these things, ladies and gentlemen? Because the world is very disturbed today. It's in a state of great tension. Everywhere you look, whether you look at the political scene, whether you look at the natural scene, anything and everything. And yet, when we speak of the advent of civilization, we talk of the Mesopotamian civilization being the oldest. Down comes at some stage the Indus Valley civilization, but not too long ago, the French archaeologists discovered a civilization older than many of these civilizations. It was called the Mehergarh civilization, not far from where the relics and remnants of the Indus Valley civilization were found. And what surprised them, as they wrote in their analysis and thesis, was that the Mehergarh civilization, like the fabled story of Atlantis, was far, far ahead of its time. For those of you who are familiar with the root canal treatment, the French archaeologists discovered from the fossils, because people in those days were buried, they discovered that there was root canal treatment in those times. I'm talking, ladies and gentlemen, to be on the safe side, of a period which was 11,500 years ago from now. Although the director of Indian Museum and we had a talk. He felt it could have been older, he felt it could be the same. But be that as it may, it was ancient, arguably the most ancient. The surface transport system was as modern as you could imagine, as was the port. In those days, they traded, they went to various countries, known and unknown, and they exchanged goods and brought it back. But they were far ahead of their times. It almost reminded you of, as if, they had evolved completely to be in sync with the present times. In the present times, we have great scientists, best of times. Scientists who sadly also have to answer or listen to politicians whose credentials are suspect. For days, I can remember, both the Senate and the Congress, or the House of Representatives in Washington, have been asking for Mr. Trump's credentials. They have a very fine FBI or CIA, but all of these people, all the kingsmen and king's horses, still haven't been able to find the credentials of a man that they keep referring to as an overgrown fifth grader. Be that as it may, these overgrown fifth graders are in charge of whatever is happening in the most powerful regions of the world. The question is, we all know, since the advent of civilization, man has been fighting man. There have been battles, there have been wars. But when we came to the 20th century, or the century just gone by, the Duke Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated. Then started the First World War in 1914. It lasted all of 4 years till 1918. But the number of casualties, mostly civilian, was so high that all the battles and wars that you had since the advent of civilization in all over the world, in all parts of the world, well, all of them put together were not a patch on the number of casualties faced during the First World War. And then the leaders got together and said, enough is enough. No war, never again. Then came a stage, as we all know, then Nazi movement started. The rest is history. In March 1939, Adolf Hitler declared war on Poland. The very same month later, Britain declared war on Germany. Started the Second World War. We all know what happened in the Second World War. After the Pearl Harbor incident, the United States decided to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Remember one thing, ladies and gentlemen. Why am I saying all this? Because if you talk of the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there would be nothing if one of the present-day nuclear bombs were to explode. Think, just think, if one country were to use one of its missiles to attack another country with your nuclear head, and the other country were to retaliate, estimates tell us in a world where the population is roughly 8 million, or 8 billion, sorry, please pardon me, 2.5 billion would perish directly and indirectly. There would be a kind of a gas, a radioactive gas, going up to an altitude at which commercial airlines fly, which means roughly 35,000 feet and above. And it would hang around for 2.5 years. Most of nature that comes under climate control, as we now know, would also perish along with the human beings. Is this the future that I dream of? Is this the future you dream of? Of course we don't. The future we dream of, if man had evolved on expected lines, would have been idyllic. Barack Obama spearheaded a great movement which culminated in the Paris Climate Control Treaty. Most of the countries who formed the United Nations, there are 193 countries in the United Nations, most of those countries signed up. Till a certain Trump came and trumped everything. He said, simply, climate control, oh, this thing. Global warming, oh, this thing. But the other day, when it was really chilly in the White House lawns, when he was talking to the so-called quote-unquote fake media, he said, oh, rather chilly. Oh, how I wish there was global warming. It's a man as ignorant as him, a man who keeps betraying his ignorance. We knew of Mahatma Gandhi and his experiments with truth, but this man goes to the other extreme. His experimenting with the truth takes a limit. He says different things on the same subject every day. Whose faith? And he's called the leader of the free world. I wonder what the free world is. He's already got into a kind of a trade war with China, which can get worse. No collusion, talking of 2016 election. And yet, the Americans are known to consider the Russians to be adversaries since the Cold War. And remember one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to leave you with one or two thoughts since I'm about to wrap up. Once upon a time, one man whom I greatly admired, the late Martin Luther King Jr., who led the civil rights movement. After all, the Afro-Americans were slaves. Abraham Lincoln decided to abolish slavery, but then they were racist still. Around that time, when they had the civil rights movement in Washington, a record 5 million people turned up to listen to this amazing personality. Then came the I Have a Dream speech. In that speech, I'll just quote one line, and I hope I'm quoting right. He said, I have a dream that one day my children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the strength of their character. I have a dream. That dream came right. One day it was fulfilled. He was assassinated, but the dream was fulfilled to a great extent when a black man did enter the White House and served a very good 8-year term. Obama. Around the same time as Martin Luther King Jr. was another man whom I admired greatly. He lived only 3 years before he was assassinated on 22nd of November 1963. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Forget about his inaugural speech, the famous, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I'm not talking about that. But my theory agrees with what he had said. War can be averted, tensions can be averted if you are in constant dialogue and if negotiations can be there. John F. Kennedy had said at the university, never fear to negotiate, but never negotiate out of fear. Great words. Thanks largely to him, the Bay of Pigs was averted. A third world war was averted. He even sent man on the moon, if you remember. On this Gandhi Bhavan, I remember, after getting out of school, my first debate was here at Gandhi Bhavan in 66-67. And I'm proud that I was in Jadavpur University. I preferred it over St. Stephen Delhi, Presidency College, everything else, because Jadavpur was where I wanted to be. And here I am, back to my old college. So, ladies and gentlemen, is it too much to ask all the world leaders, please, please look after nature. Please, please give peace a chance. Let us have a future. Let us at least be responsible enough to leave a good future for the incoming generations. We owe it to them. Is it too much to ask? But of course not. But give it a thought. Ladies and gentlemen, to each and every one of you, thank you ever so much for lending me your ears. Thank you.